In a world governed by strength and power, King Grey stood above all. Feared by his enemies and revered by his people, he ruled with unmatched might. His every command was law, his every move studied with awe. Yet, beneath the crown and armor, he was hollow. The cheers of his kingdom could not silence the emptiness in his heart. In his final moments, alone in a grand palace that echoed with silence, King Grey reflected on a life devoid of love, friendship, or peace. He had conquered everything except loneliness. And just like that, his life came to an end. But that was not the end of his story. Suddenly, there was warmth. A brightness. The feeling of being held. He heard soft voices, not of soldiers or advisors, but of caring parents. He realized with shock and confusion he had been reborn. No longer King Grey, he now existed as a newborn child in a completely different world. His name was Arthur Leywin, and he was the son of Reynolds and Alice Leywin, a kind and humble couple living in the countryside. Though his body was small and fragile, his mind remained intact, sharp, mature, and burdened with memories of a past life. Arthur's new world was unlike the one he had known. This realm, called Dicathan, was filled with magic, mythical beasts, and ancient history. Here, people trained to harness mana, wielding it to become powerful mages or skilled warriors. As an infant, Arthur couldn't speak or walk, but his mind absorbed everything. He studied his surroundings, watching his parents, analyzing their conversations, understanding the way this world worked. He even began sensing the flow of mana in the air, a skill no normal baby could have. His parents were amazed by his intelligence and rapid development. Arthur learned to sit, crawl, and walk much earlier than normal. Behind his innocent expressions was the strategic mind of a former king, quietly calculating, always observing. But something had changed in him. In this second life, Arthur didn't just want power, he wanted connection. The love of his family, the joy of childhood, and the ability to protect without being feared. This world gave him what his previous one never could, a chance to live a meaningful life. As days turned into months, Arthur grew, physically and emotionally. He began to love his parents deeply, not as subjects or tools, but as family. The cold mask of King Grey slowly melted into the warm heart of Arthur Leywin. He had been given a rare gift, a new beginning. And this time, he would live not just as a warrior, but as a son, a friend, and a protector. The episode ends with Arthur looking toward the future, his thoughts full of determination. With the knowledge of his past and the magic of this new world, he would carve a different path, one not ruled by loneliness, but by purpose. The throne room was cold and lit only by torches. It was huge and silent, the flames casting shadows on the walls. King Grey sat on his throne, completely still. His silver hair shimmered in the torchlight, and his purple eyes were calm and cold. He stared at the man kneeling before him, a failed assassin. The man was thin, bruised, and bleeding, with his forehead pressed to the marble floor. Guards dragged in a woman and a small child, maybe 5 years old. They were dirty and terrified. The woman cried, holding her child close. The royal council stood quietly along the sides of the room, watching without saying a word. Then, the execution was ordered. The assassin begged, but no one listened. King Grey's sword flashed down once, twice. 2 dull thuds echoed in the room. The man whispered, "Thank you," his voice filled with sorrow. The camera pulled back, showing the bodies of the woman and child lying still on the cold floor. Suddenly, the scene disappeared, and soft morning light filled a quiet bedroom. Later, Arthur went outside to train with his father, Reynolds. He moved awkwardly, as any little kid would. But then, something changed. A strange feeling surged through him. His wooden sword suddenly glowed with bright blue energy, and in one powerful swing, he shattered his father's staff into splinters. Inside the house, Arthur's mother, Alice, dropped her mug when she felt the shockwave. She rushed to the window and saw her young son standing in the yard, his small body shaking, the glowing sword still in his hands. That night, the mood in the house was tense. Reynolds paced back and forth, clearly worried. Alice sat quietly, watching him. Neither of them knew what this meant for their child. The next day, a group of adventurers arrived, the Twin Horns. They were strong, confident, and clearly experienced. But Arthur's attention was drawn to Jasmine, the quietest one. Something about her calm but fierce energy fascinated him. Later, during their journey, they were attacked by bandits. Arthur watched closely. Each of the adventurers fought like a true warrior, but Jasmine stood out. She moved with deadly accuracy. Her dagger struck exactly where it needed to, with no hesitation. But then came real danger. A powerful sorcerer attacked them. Their carriage was thrown off balance, heading for a cliff. Arthur saw his father wounded, blood covering his clothes. Even injured, Reynolds used his last strength to push Arthur away from the danger. Everything happened fast. Arthur, holding Jasmine's dagger, made a choice. A magical blast hit him, but before it could finish him off, he threw the dagger. Its rope wrapped around the sorcerer, and together, they fell off the cliff into the forest. Branches hit Arthur as he fell, and pain filled his body. The sorcerer's body tumbled beside him, helpless. Arthur hit the ground hard. Just before blacking out, he saw something strange, a pair of golden eyes with slits like a snake's, and shimmering scales. Then everything went dark. Episode 3. The wind was thin and cold at the edge of the cliff where Arthur Leywin had fallen. His small body, battered and bruised, lay nestled among craggy rocks and twisted roots. Consciousness returned slowly, seeping into his bones like the early morning fog. Every muscle ached from the impact, but his mind, sharp beyond his young years, recognized at once that he was still alive, barely. As he sat up, disoriented and weak, Arthur found himself surrounded by towering ancient trees and the quiet hush of an untouched forest. A strange pressure filled the air, like the weight of an enormous presence watching from the shadows. It wasn't long before he discovered the source. In the distance, nestled between jagged cliffs, a cavern mouth yawned wide. From its darkness emerged a creature unlike anything Arthur had seen in either this life or the one before. A dragon, titanic in size and grace, stepped forward, her scales gleaming with a mysterious sheen of violet and silver, her eyes ancient and intelligent. Her very existence radiated power, and yet, there was no threat in her posture. Only serenity. Arthur's instincts flared, but his strength was gone. He prepared himself for death, but instead of destruction, he received healing. The dragon, who would come to be known as Sylvia, showed him compassion. She offered fruit from deep within her cave, juicy, mana-rich, and unlike anything that grew in the surrounding wilds. He accepted it hesitantly, feeling its energy seep into his bones, quickening the healing process. Days passed in quiet harmony. Within the safety of the dragon's domain, Arthur regained his strength. Sylvia did not speak with words, yet her actions carried meaning. She observed him closely as he practiced breathing techniques and attempted to channel mana, her silent gaze guiding him when he faltered. Through unspoken lessons, she taught him that mana was more than just energy, it was life, intent, and balance. In the glow of the cave's crystalline walls, Arthur began to perceive mana not as a force to be dominated, but one to harmonize with. He practiced drawing mana from his core rather than his surroundings, an early lesson that would shape his magical development. The dragon seemed pleased by his rapid understanding, but there was a deeper lesson she sought to instill. At night, when the forest outside the cave slumbered, Sylvia showed him visions, fleeting glimpses of his family, safe and sound, continuing their lives unaware of his absence. The sight brought him solace, melting the hard edges of fear that clung to his mind since the fall. Yet it also awakened another emotion, resolve. Arthur began to reflect not only on the physical strength he desired, but also the reason behind it. In his past life, he had craved power for control, for security, for supremacy. But now, as he sat before an ancient dragon who could destroy kingdoms yet chose to nurture a child, he began to understand a different path. Power, when used without compassion, bred only solitude and ruin. But when used with purpose, to protect, to heal, to uplift, it could become something noble. Sylvia's presence became a mirror for Arthur's soul. Through her silent wisdom and ancient grace, she instilled in him the importance of responsibility. In that hidden cave, time seemed to stretch, allowing Arthur to shed another layer of his past life's cold ambition. His journey was no longer just about becoming the strongest, it was about becoming someone worthy of the strength he sought. When the time finally came for him to leave, Arthur stood taller. Not just physically, but in spirit. Sylvia watched him with the calm eyes of someone who had seen empires rise and fall. No words passed between them, but the bond was forged, deep, quiet, and eternal. As Arthur stepped out into the sunlit forest once more, the shadows of doubt had lifted. What remained was a flame, steady, focused, and ready to grow. Pushing past branches and underbrush, he stumbled upon a grim scene, a band of rugged, foul-smelling kidnappers surrounding a small figure, a young elf girl bound and frightened, her eyes wild with fear. Rage simmered in Arthur's gut. Without hesitation, he sprang into action. The battle was brief and brutal. The kidnappers, no match for his honed instincts and honed mana, fell swiftly under his might. As the final attacker crumpled to the ground, Arthur turned to the girl. She was beautiful in an ethereal, forest-born way, long silver hair, large emerald eyes, and a presence that stirred something deep inside him. For the briefest of moments, as he met her gaze, an image flashed in his mind, a vision of someone, or something, familiar. It vanished just as quickly, leaving only the thundering of his heart behind. The girl introduced herself, Tesha Aerolith, daughter of an elven noble house. Yet she was lost, her memory of the way home blurred by trauma and fear. Arthur, despite his own journey, couldn't ignore her vulnerability, her silent plea for safety. Days passed as they traveled together, forging an unspoken bond. Arthur found her presence comforting, her laughter light, her innocence untouched by the cruelty of the world. Yet even as he smiled, a strange pain began to pulse in his chest, a dull, growing ache that seemed to echo in the depths of his mana core. They reached the borders of Elenwar just as dawn painted the sky in soft gold. Relief shimmered in Tesha's eyes, but it was short-lived. Elven guards burst from the trees like shadows. Without warning, Arthur was surrounded. Their blades shimmered with suspicion and fear, not of Tesha's captors, but of him. Before he could explain, rough hands gripped his arms. He looked to Tesha, confused, betrayed, but she stood silent. Her eyes were wide, unreadable, her lips pressed into a trembling line. The thick canopy of Elenwar's ancient forest cast a shadowy veil overhead as Arthur Leywin, still shaken by his unexpected arrest, was led deeper into the heart of the elven realm. The elven guards flanked him in silence, their faces unreadable but their eyes sharp with suspicion. Arthur's thoughts churned with unanswered questions. At last, they arrived at the opulent halls of the elven palace, where a figure of unmistakable authority awaited, Varian Aerolith, the former king of Elenwar and grandfather to Tesha. With a single commanding gesture, Varian dismissed the guards. "This boy is our guest." The shackles were removed, and Arthur instinctively massaged his wrists. He glanced at Tesha, who stood nearby, her gaze carefully averted. Varian stepped forward, eyes appraising Arthur with a blend of curiosity and respect. "You've shown courage and strength well beyond your years," he said. "Such traits are not easily found." In the days that followed, Arthur was introduced to Alduin and Muriel, Tesha's parents. They welcomed him with kindness and gratitude for saving their daughter. Arthur recounted parts of his journey, cautiously skirting the truth about Sylvia. When he asked about returning to the Sapin Kingdom, Alduin explained that the teleportation gate would remain closed for 5 years. Still, he offered to arrange a safe escort should Arthur wish to make the long journey back. Yet even amid the elven hospitality, a growing discomfort stirred within Arthur. A persistent ache burned in his chest, growing more intense with each passing day. One evening, as he sat alone in the palace gardens, the stillness was broken by Varian's sudden appearance. Without a word, the old elf launched a lightning-fast strike. Arthur barely managed to block it. "You're strong," Varian said, stepping back and lowering his stance. The power Sylvia had left him was not only a blessing, it was a dangerous burden. Seeing the urgency in Varian's eyes, Arthur understood. The elven elder extended an offer, to teach him, to help him master what now threatened to consume him. With resolve hardening in his chest, Arthur accepted, unaware of just how grueling the path ahead would be. Arthur Leywin awoke with a start, his body slick with sweat and his chest heaving as remnants of a nightmare clung to his mind like shadows at dawn. In that dream, a monstrous entity had towered over him, an embodiment of his deepest fears and the unresolved weight of his past life as King Grey. Before he could fully gather his bearings, the door to his chamber burst open. Tesha Aerolith stood there, urgency in her eyes, beckoning him to rise and face the day. The palace halls of Elenwar echoed with quiet tension as they moved through them. Whispers of unease trailed in their wake, none louder than the voices of Alduin and Muriel, Tesha's parents. Their concerns were veiled in tradition but edged with suspicion. Arthur's prolonged presence in the Elven Kingdom, a human amidst their kind, was not easily accepted. But Tesha, unwavering, defended him fiercely. She reminded them of his courage, of how he had risked everything to save her. It was Varian, the former Elven king and Tesha's grandfather, who ultimately tempered the discourse. With the gravitas of one who had seen centuries pass, He spoke of Arthur's extraordinary potential and the necessity of his training. To aid in that mission, he led Arthur beyond the palace, into the heart of the ancient forest. Lived Rhenia Darkasson, an enigmatic seer steeped in forgotten wisdom. Her dwelling was a shrine to the old ways, lined with dusty tomes and glowing relics. With quiet authority, she revealed the source of Arthur's inner unrest, the beast will that now stirred within him. Without guidance, it could consume him entirely. To soothe his turmoil and restore his clarity, Rhenia performed a ritual of communion. Through a glimmering basin of enchanted water, Arthur reached across the veil of distance to speak with his parents, Reynolds and Alice. Their voices, full of warmth and worry, grounded him. The reunion was brief, a flickering heartbeat in the flow of time, but it rekindled a fire in Arthur's chest. He would not falter. Upon returning to Elenoir, Arthur and Tesha ventured into the town, only to be confronted by Fereth Ivsar II, a noble elf who bore his arrogance like a badge and did not hide his disdain for humans. The duel that followed was swift and decisive. With elegant precision, Arthur bested Fereth, silencing the crowd's skepticism and earning their grudging respect. As twilight draped the kingdom in violet hues, Arthur stood alone in contemplation. The path forward was steep, fraught with relentless training, soul-searching, and the weight of legacy. But with Tesha beside him and mentors like Virion and Rhenia guiding his growth, he no longer felt alone in his burden. 3 years had quietly slipped by since Arthur Leywin had begun his relentless training under the seasoned guidance of Virion in the heart of the Elenoir kingdom. The once throbbing ache in his mana core, a constant reminder of his limitations, had long since faded, replaced by the steady pulse of mastery earned through sweat, pain, and unwavering resolve. One golden morning, as sunlight filtered through the dense emerald canopy above, Arthur sparred with Tesha beneath Virion's watchful gaze. Wooden swords collided in rhythmic precision, each strike a silent testament to their discipline and growing synchronicity. Virion, later, in the stillness of a secluded glade, Virion approached Arthur with a solemn gravity. In his hands was the egg, a gift from Sylvia, long guarded and now ready to awaken. "It's time," he said simply, passing the relic to Arthur. The moment Arthur cradled it, a surge of raw, unfamiliar energy surged through him. The egg pulsed with light, its shell fracturing to reveal a tiny black dragon with luminous scales and inquisitive eyes. In that instant, Arthur knew her name, Sylvie. The connection was immediate and absolute. With Sylvie's arrival, the lingering pain in his core dissolved, replaced by a profound sense of wholeness he hadn't known he lacked. Yet Virion's voice carried a note of caution. "A dragon's bond is rare and powerful. You must guard her secret carefully." On the day of his departure, Virion handed Arthur a compass etched with the Aerolith crest. "So you'll always find your way back," he said, the weight of the moment heavy between them. Tesha, her voice trembling beneath unspoken emotions, embraced him tightly. "Promise me you'll visit," she whispered. As Arthur turned to leave, Sylvie nestled on his shoulder. He cast one last glance at Elenoir, a kingdom that had become more than a refuge. It had become a home. The road ahead was uncertain, yet with Sylvie beside him and the memories of Elenoir etched into his heart, he felt prepared to meet the unknown. Upon reaching Xyrus City, Arthur stood before a modest home, his heart pounding with anticipation. The door creaked open, revealing a young girl with familiar features and wide, searching eyes. "Arthur," she breathed. He smiled, recognition dawning in his chest. It was Elenoir. Moments later, his parents appeared, their faces alight with joy. The golden light of the afternoon sun bathed Xyrus City in a warm, gentle glow as Arthur Leywin stood before the familiar threshold of his family's new home. Sylvie, his ever-watchful companion, rested quietly on his shoulder, her soft fur catching the light. For a moment, Arthur hesitated, his heart caught between anticipation and uncertainty. Then, with a breath, he knocked. Inside, the warmth of home engulfed him. Joy, tears, and laughter intertwined as Reynolds and Alice wrapped their arms around their son, their voices trembling with emotion. Around a table heavy with comforting food, Arthur began to share the tale of his journey. He spoke of distant lands and strange places, though he carefully veiled the harsher truths, choosing to shield his family from the darker parts of his path. Sylvie, introduced as his mana beast companion, became a point of awe and wonder. Reynolds spoke of their lives in his absence, his role now as a security instructor at the Helstia auction house, and his advancement to an orange core. The following day brought the Helstia family to their doorstep. Among them was their daughter, Lilia, curious, bright, and with a spark of latent potential. Arthur learned that their two families would be sharing the residence, a change that hinted at new bonds yet to be formed. Later, in the backyard, Arthur and Reynolds exchanged blows in a friendly spar. Before the watching eyes of their families, Arthur demonstrated his elemental control: air, fire, earth, water, each movement seamless and confident. It was enough to draw admiration and surprise alike. Vincent Helstia, impressed by the display, proposed that Arthur consider enrolling at Xyrus Academy, the continent's most prestigious school of magic. Arthur, however, declined for now. He had just returned to the people he had longed for, and he wasn't ready to leave them again so soon. As night descended, the family gathered for a peaceful meal, each moment a reminder of what truly mattered. The next morning, Arthur reunited with the Twin Horns party. Laughter echoed through the room as tales were exchanged, old bonds reaffirmed. Yet beneath the comfort and celebration, a subtle tension remained, a quiet whisper in Arthur's mind. Despite all he had seen and accomplished, the world still held mysteries he had yet to uncover. Morning light spilled across Xyrus City, casting the metropolis in a golden glow as Arthur Leywin stepped into a new chapter of his life. Alongside his mother, Alice, his younger sister, Eleanor, Lilia Helstia, and Mrs. Helstia, he began exploring the city's energetic streets. Before immersing themselves in its magic-infused vibrancy, the group stopped at a local salon, where Arthur received a sharp new makeover, an outward sign of the fresh beginning that lay ahead. As they meandered through the bustling avenues, Arthur was captivated by the many magical wares lining storefronts. One particular shop drew his gaze, its shelves sparkled with beast cores, each humming with dormant power. Mrs. Helstia explained their potential to help awaken mana, though she cautioned they were far from a guaranteed solution. Lilia, clearly disheartened, voiced her frustration over her failure to awaken, her insecurities magnified in the shadow of Arthur's natural talent. Later, compelled by her own resolve, Lilia slipped into the shop alone, toying with the idea of purchasing a core using her allowance. Arthur, having sensed her emotional struggle, joined her with quiet encouragement. Their exchange was soon interrupted by a group of Xyrus Academy students who mocked Lilia, their condescension cutting deep. Before the confrontation could escalate, Mrs. Helstia's commanding presence dispersed the bullies with ease. Tension simmered upon their return to the Helstia household. Lilia confronted her father, Vincent, accusing him of favoring Arthur simply because of his magical aptitude. Her voice heavy with resentment, she stormed off, leaving a silence in her wake. Arthur found her in the garden, her eyes reflecting a storm of frustration and sorrow. Gently, he shared a story from his past, of a time when he, too, had wrestled with inadequacy, and how something as small as a glowing flower had rekindled his hope. Touched by his vulnerability, Lilia opened up about her own doubts and fears. Arthur offered to help her unlock her mana. The next day, he handed Vincent a heartfelt letter penned by Lilia, expressing her dreams of becoming a mage and her longing for her parents' support. As Vincent read the letter aloud, emotion filled the room. To everyone's surprise, Lilia emerged from hiding. It had all been a test to uncover her family's true feelings. Tears followed, along with heartfelt embraces, as the Helstias reconciled, their bonds renewed.